What's the best example you have witnessed of someone destroying their own happiness life? Before we start with the first story, please hit a subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. My friend of friend had a wife, a kid on the way, a good job. I was in the same grade as his little sister. He was 2 years older. And we went to the same school from kindergarten through high school. Last year, he was sentenced to almost 40 years in a federal prison for conspiracy to solicit a 14-year-old who was actually an undercover agent, and a slew of CP charges. Now the wife has divorced him. He will never see his kid, and will be an old man if he gets out. There were a lot of things he said in online chat forums that are so horrible I couldn't even putting that thing out there. Story 2. Some guy at work was caught red-handed stealing AirPods from the locker room. When he was sent to pick up his own kit before being sent home, he excused himself to go to the toilet and took a shit on the floor. The kicker is that we work on an oil rig. It's impossible to get away with theft, and he was a senior technician making really good money. He didn't need the AirPods, he was just stealing for the fun of it. He's now not required back, and all the companies talk to each other. He shat away his career over a pair of AirPods. Story 3. A nurse I work with recently got fired. One of our residents' nursing home was in the hospital. He had a debit card, but statements went to our business manager. She noticed a charge for a takeout lunch on his card. Generally, we take resident wallets and put them in the nursing manager's office, but this one was in the narcotics box, meaning only nurses for that unit had access to it. When the business manager, nursing manager, and executive director called in this nurse to discuss it, he lunged at the business manager and put her in a chokehold. He is in his late 50s, early 60s. Had a full career with pension from the army before nursing. Made reasonable money as a nurse. And now has an assault charge, a financial abuse of a vulnerable adult charge, and I'm sure is losing his nursing license. Over stealing money for a takeout lunch. Story 4. Someone left $10K cash in a sealed envelope on the counter at a retail job I had. I gave it immediately to the owner of the store, who put it in the safe. I knew the customer as they were a regular. He came back in a panic about 30 minutes later. I didn't get a thank you, f*** off, nothing. Haha. The store owner ended up giving me a $100 bill after nicely telling the customer he was a d*** for not saying thank you. Man, that guy and his wife were great to work for. Story 5. My husband's friend had a beautiful wife, gorgeous house, 2 lovely boys, a job he loved, and lots of great friends who loved him. Then he decided at the age of 35 to get into hard drugs. He has been in and out of prison for violent crimes, transportation of large volumes of heroin, attempted murder, burglary, and stalking. He is homeless again as he burned down his flat on purpose to get a move. No one will ever talk to him again. He's now 55 and has nothing. His wife divorced him after giving him far too many chances. His sons hate him. His real friends gone forever. All for nothing. Story 6. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist. The first patient I ever lost was a 2-year-old girl who we knew would eventually leave us due to multiple medical problems. She passed peacefully at home, where we did all our therapy sessions. She was never not attached to multiple machines that kept her alive. A track, vent, CO2 monitors, so many wires and alarms. A week to the day after her passing, I woke from a dream where I was holding her on my lap. Her mother was next to me, and we were playing. She was completely healed, not a wire in sight. Smiling, talking, she was not able to speak in life, and being a normal 2-year-old. I knew she was okay. I already believed in heaven, but this made me believe I saw her there. Story 7. My daughter and I were standing outside of a shop in a strip mall in a very suburban area. A smartly dressed man in a nice suit was approaching us, and as he did, a squirrel approached as well. Strange place for a squirrel to be. The man smiled at us, we smiled back. The squirrel scurried closer to the man. The man fixed his gaze on the squirrel, and the squirrel scurried faster toward him as he started to panic. And that damn squirrel ran up the man's leg and around his body, and that grown man let out a shriek I'll never forget. My daughter and I just watched in horror as this poor man got assaulted by a crazy-ass squirrel. The squirrel finally took off, and all 3 of us just stared at each other like, what the f*** just happened here? It was wild. Story 8. was in a car accident where the vehicle rolled twice over a median into oncoming traffic lanes. Ejected from the car and walked away with a scratch on my forearm. I'm pretty strict about wearing my seatbelt, and for some reason I didn't have it on this particular day. I was told if I had it on, I more than likely would have broken my neck in the crash and would be dead. Felt very out of body for the rest of the day. I am still strict about my seatbelt and always wear it now, despite the bizarre occurrence from the crash. Crazy part was there was 5 others in the car with the same circumstances as me. We all had minor to zero injuries. It felt weird and unexplainable to walk away from that situation. Story 9. My best friend's ex-wife. He was the most loving husband who doted on her and gave her everything. They wanted to start a family. His family was also very accepting of her. She was a counselor who decided to cheat on him with one of her patients. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. My friend finally saw the light and divorced her. He's now remarried to a fantastic woman who appreciates him as much as he does her, and they just had their first child. I don't know what the ex-wife is doing now, but I hope she knows what she threw away one day. Story 10. A former classmate of mine pursued medicine even though she didn't want it. Her parents was a big factor of this decision. She was into music, and I'd have to say she was great and damp. Really passionate doing it. Her parents wasn't just supportive. During college, she failed almost every subject and then eventually dropped out. The last time I heard, she left home and is living with her BF now. It's just unfortunate she wasn't able to take the path that she loves. F the parents, honestly, for pressuring her. I think she would have been happier if she pushed through music. I don't blame her though, maybe she didn't have a choice. Sometimes we have to disappoint our parents a little bit to be happy. Story 11. I was a child protection specialist for years. I was assigned to work with a certain mom. It was the 3rd time the courts had been involved with her due to drug abuse. But her drug of choice was huffing. The only huffing case I ever had. She was absolutely a lovely person. She had worked hard to earn a degree and enter into a career field. She was kind and beautiful. She was cooperative and she was determined. But despite how hard she was trying, she would relapse, and this was to be the last chance she got with the courts, so the stakes were high. We worked so well together. She spent 18 months going to treatment, getting re-employed, getting her own place, and having increased visits with her kids, who were also wonderful. The kids had been staying at her parents' place while we were working towards progress. We went to court and requested reunification, and the judge granted it. We were all so proud of her and happy for them as a family. We planned to fully move her kids home with her a week from that very court date. 2 days before we planned to return her kids to her, she drove her car through the front of a Walmart because she had been huffing and was high. She called a Walmart employee and proceeded to huff herself to death in the electronics aisle, where there was keyboard duster spray, while law enforcement was on its way. I got the news at 5 a.m. that she was dead and had to go tell her children they wouldn't be going back to their mother, ever. Story 12. I worked on a school bus as a monitor aide. There was one driver, we'll call him Ed. Ed was always complaining about something. Every single day there was some new issue, some problem. He was a bit of a pain. He got into an argument with one of our supervisors over the radio one day and earned himself a 3-day suspension. His first morning back from his suspension. First route of the day, he gets on the radio and starts back complaining. Dispatch asks him a few simple questions. He responds with hostility and some really unprofessional comments. The director of transportation, our big boss, gets on the radio and asks Ed to meet him in his office after morning routes. Ed responds, "I'll be there if I have time," boss says. "I need you to understand, this is not optional," Ed comes back. "I need you to understand, I'll be there if I have time," mind you. This is on the radio as we are picking up high school kids. Everyone can hear what's happening this entire time. Another dispatcher calls in and tells Ed, "When you finish your high school route, park your bus there at the school. We are bringing someone to take your route over and to bring you back to the lot." Ed did not like this and responded by saying, "Negative. I am finishing my route. Me. If you want someone to drive my route, you get our boss's boss and have her come drive this route. Otherwise, I am finishing my route." Dispatch asked for an estimated time of arrival to the high school. He responded, "Whenever our boss's boss is going to be there. Otherwise, I get there when I get there." Somewhere around this time, he starts talking like, They were targeting him and picking on him, and that it ends today. Again, at this point, he has a bus full of high school kids. Now, I did not see what happened at the high school, but I heard from several other drivers. Apparently, the police were waiting for him once he got there, and they removed him from his bus. To quote one driver, he acted a fool the entire time. I'm not sure exactly what he was charged with. Maybe kidnapping, since he acted like he wasn't going to bring the kids to school unless he got what he wanted. Theft for not bringing the bus back? No clue. But I do know he was arrested and fired. A few days later, we get the news that he had a heart attack and died, most likely from all the stress. Story 13. I have a friend, I'll call him Jay, smart as heck, but maybe a little on the spectrum, so clueless as to social things. But he made great money in tech. One day, he's at a friend's house, and the friend said something to the effect of, "Nobody could bug my house without me knowing." So Jay thought it would be funny to put a spare webcam he happened to have in his backpack in his friend's entertainment center, plugged into his Xbox, just to see how long it took him to notice. Well, the friend didn't notice, but his friend's girlfriend did, and thought the friend had been recording them having sex, so she called the cops. The cops arrested the friend. Jay hears about it and goes in to explain. He didn't think he needed a lawyer, he figured the cops would be able to see it was just a dumb misunderstanding. Thing is, in my state, placing a recording device in someone's home without their consent is voyeurism, which is a sex crime. And Jay just admitted to the cops on the record that he had done so. Also in my state, it's a law that all sex crimes must be prosecuted. So even though Jay's friend and his friend's girlfriend didn't want to press charges, Jay still got prosecuted. The prosecutor and judge were as gentle as they could be, but he was still convicted. Now, as a registered sex offender for life, he has trouble finding and keeping work, gets harassed by neighbors, can't go to most of his kids' sports events, etc., all over one seemingly harmless prank. Story 14. My dad did this same thing when he was about 35 to 37. He had kids super early in life, and we had an amazing childhood. After starting to drink harder in his 30s, all of the sudden I was finding tin foil in random places and find him passed out around the house. Thank God my mom ended up divorcing him, and he ended up homeless and miserable. For a short period of time, I would still reach out to him just to see how he was doing. I would lend him some money and send him on his way. One time, he was wearing full face makeup that he thought was cool because Mickey Avalon does it. Sometimes he would be living in the abandoned motel, sometimes a tent. He ended up marrying a convicted felon who has multiple armed robbery charges, and more drug charges than I can count. They have been telling his parents they are getting clean. His parents, especially his mom, have a super soft spot for him and decided to help him with an apartment. A crack pipe fell out of the wife's purse right in front of my grandma. He is also a trust funder, but the trust is now conditioned around him passing a drug test. He claims he is clean but refuses the drug tests because that is an invasion of his privacy. Such a loss of a human being. It can truthfully happen to anyone, but at a certain point, no one can help you but yourself. Story 15. My dad. He was a really talented mechanic and the shop foreman. Well liked, made great money, loved his job, owned a nice house in a beautiful neighborhood, in a port town we all loved. Married to a wonderful woman, my mom, had 2 kids. He just couldn't stop drinking. He became abusive and horrible, lost everything. His house, his job, his family. He drank himself to death when I was 19, and my sister was 17. He died alone, to her enormous credit. After she left, my mom put herself through school and supported us all on her own. She got blacklisted by my dad's family and hers since the divorce was something they all looked down upon and felt she shouldn't shame the family. They even threatened to gang up on her and lie in court saying she was on drugs. She was not. It was the bravest and best thing she ever could have done for us. At the funeral, all these same people just kept telling her how brave she was, and we didn't know how bad he was till years later. My sister and I are both successful, thriving adults with great professions. We have our own families and children. We both own our houses and have a good income. We're well educated. Our lives are filled with love. It's all thanks to my mom. Over the years, I think about my dad from time to time. Having my own children now, a husband, all of whom I love dearly. I can't imagine any scenario I would ever put them through that. I don't feel sad about it anymore. But it's just such a waste. His whole life. And for what? Some liquid in a bottle. Addiction is a terrible thing. All right, folks, that's a wrap. If you like more of this, please hit a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below. I'll see you in the next video.